Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, as our viewers on YouTube might be able to tell, we both have new background photos from Saturday's spring game. So it's like a whole new podcast.
It's brand new, Tom, and it is actually a little new because we both did a little preparation for the show. So that's
It's
something.
it's good to try different things every once in a while. Not sure if this habit will stick, but it's good to it's like, oh, I'm going to try a new vegetable today. Turns out it's terrible. I don't know if we're going to do this again, but we're going to do it once, and that's good. That's progress for us.
Yeah, we're out of our comfort zone right now, but we are to the point of the year where preparation does have to happen because there's nothing going on. So you have to figure out what you're going to talk about before you start talking about it. Whereas, March 17th, you and I sit down like, what are we going to talk about? Well, the week that was there's plenty to talk about. We talked to coaches and players, and now it's like, what do we talk about? NCAA.
Guess we need to get more coaches and players. Is that what I'm hearing?
No. Hopefully that does happen. The coaches aspect of that in the next few weeks, and we'll see. But we thought what we would do today is we've both gone back and rewatched the spring game with a scientific eye. I've watched multiple plays multiple times. Hit the J key on my keyboard, rewinds the YouTube back 10 seconds. I'll watch the play again, taking my notes, just feeling really smart about myself and like I'm really doing something. And then Tom, he didn't quite go to that extent.
I watched the YouTube on my TV, so it was even bigger. So I did even more for the viewers.
Dang it! People who one up. Is that a Jersey thing? Is that just probably anyway? So let's just get started and let's talk about some stuff that caught our eye that maybe we didn't get a chance to talk about during the instant reaction. Because, for one, if anybody listened to the instant reaction, my apologies. Tom, I don't know if you listened to any of that. There were times where it sounded like there were helicopters over top of us, like right in our face because of that wind tunnel.
It was not that windy down there. I didn't feel like, and then listening to it on the on the podcast, it was like, that's pretty loud. Didn't seem that loud at the time.
No, it's like the wind was entirely concentrated on the microphone of the phone that we were talking into. And of course, also had an issue because we had microphones, but my new phone did not have a headphone jack. And so that was partly on me, partly on Tom for not reminding me about my phone issue.
For not reminding you that I didn't know you got a new phone. Yes, I would like to apologize to the listeners. It won't happen again unless Tony gets another new phone.
I don't know. We'll see. One with a headphone jack for sure. So we thought we'd, just rewatch stuff that caught your eye because you can't see everything when you're watching it live upstairs or especially on the field taking pictures. You don't really see anything as a photographer. So we went through and we jotted some stuff down that we just wanted to talk about that maybe we didn't get a chance to talk about in the past. And then as I'm looking at stuff I've jotted down here, I actually did talk about this stuff. So remember me talking about being prepared, but whatever. Let's first go with something that I watched, Paris Johnson playing at right guard. I thought he had some questionable moments in terms of some run blocking and things like that. He was getting the better of by a couple of guys here and there. So that was a little concerning. Not really concerning. It was just interesting to see him struggle because this isn't his natural position, and we know he's been playing well, and people have been talking him up. Now, there was one moment against Ty Hamilton, which was pretty fascinating to me, where it was a pass rush. Ty Hamilton pushed him backwards twice, like towards the quarterback, and then Paris Johnson just had enough and said no and stopped him dead right there. So you can see the pass blocking aspect of him at guard is still fine. It's the run blocking aspect that may take a little bit of time, but watching him also pull, that's what you like to see because he can do that and he's going to demolish people. And I think he may have done that to Tommy Eichenberger or Kayvon Pope at one time and just put him on their back. But just it was interesting to see him struggle a little bit. But of course, this is a new position and we expect that. But maybe it's also a good sign for the Ohio State defense that they were able to get him to struggle a little bit.
Yeah, and you expect struggles and you expect things to not look great in the run game for any number of reasons during the spring game. But watching back, it was just like every time they ran the ball, it was like, what? Are they trying to just, is this going to like, well, this is the coaches intentionally saying like, let's get the offense behind the sticks. We're going to run the ball on first down here. And we're only going to get 2 yards because that's all you ever get in the spring game. So yeah, you don't want to read too much into that, I guess. I mean, individual matchups though, that's where you have the opportunity to see it. So it's strange because you always typically think like offensive linemen coming in, like the run blocking tends to be the first thing that they get. And then the pass block is it's more technical, more, that takes a lot longer to develop for some guys. So it's interesting that, you looked at him and thought it was kind of a little bit the opposite. So I guess if they're planning on, they're probably going to be doing more throwing than running this fall. So I guess if you had to pick one, you would pick pass, good pass pro. So, that's not the worst thing. And again, yes, this is he played a little bit of guard last year. He's still kind of adjusting. So yeah, it would have been very surprising if it was immediately perfect. So, All right. For mine, before I do my first real one, let me just say that whoever decided to paint the lacrosse lines on the field in yellow really ticked me off when I went back and watched the game. And I'm like, is it 1st and 3? Is it now 1st and 17? What is going on? Yeah, that needs to not happen again. Or the Big Ten Network needs to change the color of its first down line. Either way, it doesn't matter.
Like even watching it live, somebody next to me was like, I keep thinking it's first down. I'm like, do you realize you are watching the field live and you're being distracted by the yellow line?
It's not normally there during a real game during the fall. So yeah, you would think you'd be able to tune that out there. But yeah, on TV, like, man, was that annoying. All right. My first actual one, I don't know that they actually said Cormonta Hamilton's name at any point during the broadcast, but there were a couple plays where it's like he got some good push. There were several where someone batted down a pass and it was either Cormonta Hamilton or Jacoby Cowan, who wear very similar looking numbers in the middle of the line. I went back and tried to look. They were a little thrifty with the replays on a lot of those plays. So there were a couple where it was like, yeah, that was someone there on the defensive line. But he was someone who jumped out to me as, like, I don't know if he got on the stat sheet at all. He did not have like the Jack Sawyer day where it was like multiple sacks and all that kind of stuff, but he was disruptive in the middle of the line. And, for him, he's someone who I think Ohio State fans are probably not thinking like that's someone who's going to be a huge difference maker this year. But if he can just be, they don't need him to be the starter there at 3 Tech. If he can just be like a contributor there at 3 Tech, that gives you so much more depth. You can rotate more. That is just like a little thing that could potentially turn into something that, if he's a reliable player for them there this fall, that's a nice little bonus for Larry Johnson.
It was interesting to see 93 and 83 running around out there, and you'd be like, who was at that time? Because you did see quite a bit of them out there. And Jacoby Cowan, this is his first time out there. He was hurt all last year. Cormonta Hamilton is still working his way into whatever kind of rotation he can get into. But when you keep having to, because more like 3 or 4 times I was like, okay, which is that 93 or 83? Because that were their 2 numbers. And I think one time they were lined up next to each other, which made it easier. So it's like, well, they're both out there, so I know it's one or the other. So I think if we came out of this spring thinking maybe the defensive line is deeper than what we thought going in, then it was because of, seeing some things from Cowan and Hamilton and even Darian Henry Young. And I'll go to a guy I have jotted down here for one of my next ones, and that's Noah Potter, who wear 97 from day one, big 6'6", 260-pound defensive end, moved to defensive tackle this spring, and I thought had some really nice moments in the game. I think maybe one of them was even against Paris Johnson. And this is a tall kid playing defensive tackle, so he's going to have some leverage issues, but he's just a big overall guy listed at 6'6", 270 now, probably larger than that, and will continue to put on weight. But we like Larry Johnson likes those defensive ends that can play inside at that 3 Tech, and he might be one of them. So it was just like you're talking about Hamilton. It's just good to see these guys who are now year 3 get in there and not look out of place. And this is a guy in a new place. And so I thought that was positive, and they may not get much out of him this year, but they're going to be losing some guys after this year with Teron Vincent, probably Haskell Garrett, certainly Antoine Jackson, certainly. So there's going to be some opportunities. And I just thought it was good to see him out there and, running to the ball and holding up and making some plays, crashing the line, moving guys, and somebody maybe I wasn't expecting to stand out or just not necessarily stand out, but just jump out a little bit. I thought that was good for them and him.
Yeah, that comes in right with the Cormonte Hamilton thing, where it's just like, if you have an extra guy there, like this is not someone who's probably going to have to start, barring a lot of injuries this year. That's not someone who they're probably relying on to start. But that third year is when you typically see that's a little bit of the, it's not make or break, but it's like, if you're going to start playing significantly, that's when it starts to look like, hey, this is a guy who should start playing. So, if he's on that path now after moving inside, like that's great. And, yes, you do have some leverage issues, but how many passes did we see get knocked down by linemen on Saturday?
Mm-hmm.
If you're 6'6" and you get those arms up, that takes away a decent chunk of that passing lane in the inside of that defensive line. So yeah, he's an interesting, not necessarily a real traditional 3-tech prospect, but yeah, that's definitely going to be an interesting one to watch. And he came in as a 4-star prospect. It was not like this is some like under the radar project. So it took a little while to kind of get his body built up, but that's I think the path to the field is probably easier on the at the 3-tech spot than it is at the defensive end spot right now with the rotation as deep as it is outside. So yeah, that's a good one. I'm going to take one that, this is not going to be a name that is coming out of the blue. This is a name you've probably heard a few times. This is the name you've heard the last 2 mornings on the Morning Scoop, talking to both Mark Givler and Bill Green. And, I watched the spring game, and as you said, I'm down on the field shooting from one end zone, and it's a terrible point of view to get, to have like an overall sense of the impact of the game. And sometimes there's stuff happening on the other side of the offensive line you can't really see, and it's just like, well, something happened. I don't know exactly what it was. There was 20 large humans between me and whatever just happened. Going back and watching it, like, boy, howdy, Jack Sawyer might be pretty good, huh? Like he might be a pretty good football player. He got credited for 3 sacks. It looked like he could have had probably a couple more. And there was one play that was, he went around Grant Toutant a couple times with just like a speed rush around the edge. And, Grant Toutant is not going to start at tackle this year for Ohio State. He's not quite ready there. This is his second year. You don't necessarily expect a tackle to necessarily be ready the spring of their second year. So he's probably not, he's not up to the level of the other tackles at Ohio State yet. So that's okay. So beating him around the edge on a speed rush is like, okay, that's good, but you're going to be going against better tackles this fall. He just bull rushed Enoch Vermahi, who's a big dude. This is his 3rd year in the program. He's done the body by Mick thing. He has been bulked up. He got bull rushed by Jack Sawyer and got pushed like right into Jack Miller. And it was like, okay, like if you can bull rush a guy who's been a guard, who's been in the program for 3 years, who again, this is not a walk-on. This is a guy who was getting recruited by a lot of real good programs, has been in the program for 3 years, has played. This is not a guy who's like, this is his first time on the field. Like he's played for a couple of years now. You get bull rushed by a true freshman. Like that was like, okay. Like I know Enoch Vermahi's not typically a tackle, but if you're, he didn't get beat with a speed rush. It wasn't like, oh, the guy's too slow, his feet are too slow to play tackle. He got beat with a bull rush. It was like, okay, that was a thing. And then right at the end of the game, Zen Mahalski was out there at tackle against Jack Sawyer, and it was like, nope, no chance. And it's like, well, that's not realistic. You can't expect a true freshman to hold up against, checks notes, another true freshman. Okay, all right, well, so Jack Sawyer, that might be a thing.
The one, I think we're talking about the same one with Zen Mahalski. Zen Mahalski gets into his pass block stance, puts his hands out, and Jack Sawyer just slaps him down like, no. And then goes around him. It's like, no, just like he put him out there to be slapped, and Jack Sawyer just knocked him down and went around him. And I remember when he was credited with his 2nd sack, I tweeted out, hey, that's Jack Sawyer's 2nd sack. And everybody replies like, no, that should be 3. And then you go back and watch it, and like, they didn't give him credit for everything they could have. I mean, he could have walked out of there with 6 sacks. And, there was a time where he let up on one or like just touching the guy as he's throwing it or whatever. And yeah, that's not a real sack, but like he could have been credited with more than he had. But yeah, the Michalski one just stood out to me. And then like the first, I mean, like they were legitimate sacks because one, he knocked down the ball out of Jack Miller's hands. Then the Enoch Vamahi, like that was a complete bull rush into the quarterback's lap, and then you just grab him. But just go back, and if you guys are listening, and you probably are, because
If you're not hearing Tony's voice right now.
just go back and watch him slap down Zimhalski's hands and go around him. It's like, this is a guy, as you talked to Bill Green about and Mark Givler the last couple of days, where he didn't play last year, didn't do a lot of defense the year before that because he's busy playing quarterback, and yet he comes into Ohio State looking like he's all about the technique. And I think that a lot of that is because that's what he did instead of playing high school football this year, was working out and specifically doing all of this defensive end stuff so that he could be ready for this. And man, you want to see what he can do against like starters, Big Ten starters. Mm-hmm. But I think it might be kind of good.
Well, and you got to remember, he's going to play against Akron too this year. He's going to play against Tulsa, who are not, teams that are not Big Ten starters. And yeah, this could be an interesting year. He was, we always see, every time we're at practice, we always see the defensive line, the hand fighting is a huge part of what Larry Johnson teaches, because they are so precise with their technique and their get off and all that kind of stuff. But you see, well, during pregame warmups, they stand at the back of the end zone, like the back line of the end zone. And it looks like they're doing this like mini kung fu fight where they're just like, they're moving their hands and inside and outside and up and down. And they're trying, so Jack Sawyer was with Tyreek Smith and they were paired up. And, Tyreek Smith has been doing this for quite a while and has refined his technique pretty darn well. So he's probably a pretty good teacher at this point as well. I thought it was interesting that those two guys were paired up together and, they're working on that stuff like real, pointedly. That is not like a going through the motions thing with these guys. They very, very, very much take that seriously. And that sack against Michalski, like that's why. Because if you can knock the offensive tackles hands down over, you get your hands outside, you get your hands inside, where you can kind of slide your body. Jack's a Midwestern guy, so I assume he's just, let me slide right past you there. Like he probably opes as he does it, but you get those hands out of the way, and then it's like, well, now there's nothing. Now that is like the key to the defense, is keeping you between the tackle's hands. Once you get outside or inside, like then the quarterback's in trouble. To see that technique and some of that stuff already starting to get refined is like, okay, that's probably going to be a storyline worth monitoring for the next few years.
Well, and this is all something that we all learned 35 odd years ago watching Karate Kid. Wax on, wax off, paint the fence, sand the floor. It's all about hands, and we saw that on display on Saturday. Tom, my next one, and we talked a little bit about it after the game, and that was the bullet, and being able to go back and watch and see all of the different areas the bullet lined up, because you're not necessarily paying attention during the game, watching it live to where everybody is. And so you see the bullet lining up sometimes as a walkout, Sam. Other times it was deeper than the linebackers, but in front of the safety, as an outside linebacker, quasi safety as it is, but it's like an intermediate depth. Other time it's right up on the line of scrimmage. And it reminds me of exactly what Michigan used to do with Jabril Peppers and the guy after him, whose name slips my memory right now, but guys that could get into the backfield and or defend the pass, not necessarily defend the pass, Jabril Peppers. I mean, he couldn't, but that capability is there, and that's what you're being asked to do. And I just think this year, this feels like that's what this defense is going to be this year. And I don't think it was just because of the lack of linebackers in the spring. I think this is the way things have to go. This is the way recruiting is going. With talking about Jalen Johnson, you got Court Williams. There are more bullets than maybe Mike's at this point. Where this is how they've gone. And so I just thought it was interesting to watch, to see where they lined up. You see Craig Young defending a wheel route against Mitch Rossi, perfect, batted it down perfectly. There he was defending tight ends. And so and then you got Ronnie Hickman as the nickel bullet. Like they're on opposite teams in this game. But when you can situate the bullets, and you've got, well, you're our rundown bullet in Craig Young, you're our passing down bullet possibly in Ronnie Hickman. When you're specializing a specialized position, that tells me that that position is no longer specialized. It is base. And then you build off of it.
Yeah, and I had that Craig Young, Mitch Rossi play written down as well, because what was interesting to me was he's out there on a wheel route. And, Mitch Rossi is not the single most athletic receiver on this Ohio State team. He's a walk-on tight end, but
top 10.
Craig Brunn is running right with him, turns his head, looks back for the ball, swats the ball away, and it wasn't just barely get his fingertips on it. It was like hit him in the forearm, and he spiked it like a volleyball away from him. I mean, that was a little bit of, to me, with a guy who's has been working at linebacker. There's always the how comfortable is he going to be in coverage. That looked like someone who was very comfortable in coverage in that exact moment, comfortable running with the guy, didn't panic. Saw Rossi turn his head. He turned his head. Knocked the ball away. So yeah, that was. I think for sure that's something you're going to see a lot of Craig Young this year. I think that's something that's going to have to be a big part of this team. That's just where football is going right now. That's how things, that is where the entire sport of football is going right now. You're going to play your three, maybe base linebackers when you play Wisconsin or teams like Wisconsin, and, Illinois may turn into that under Burt now, but that's, for the majority of the teams you're playing, you're going to be in probably a base nickel. And so, yeah, that I think you're exactly right there.
Did you happen to watch the Illinois spring game Monday night?
I did not.
I forgot to as well.
I did. Yeah, it was. I saw the final score ended up 61-15, which made me think probably that was just first team against that second team. But yeah, that was a Monday night spring game that's a choice, man. That is. But hey, live Big Ten network coverage. I don't know when else you're going to get on. So
it's true.
It's the action of the Big Ten, Illinois football. Another guy that people have talked about that I just had some other thoughts on was CJ Stroud, which, first thing was you start the very first play of the game. He's in a black jersey. He's not supposed to get hit. He probably hasn't gotten hit his whole career outside of, maybe a couple runs during games last fall. He gets hit on that first throw, and he still completes it to Emeka Egbuka. It's like, all right, well, that didn't rattle him. And, that first tight end touchdown to Marvin Harrison. This is something that I had noticed on the field during the game. I got to go back and watch on the TV and kind of get a little more context to it. He went over to Joe Royer, who was tight end at the end of the line on the left-hand side, talked to Joe Royer, and then goes back, takes a snap, looks left, like he's looking for Joe Royer. I think I'm more convinced than I was before that he was, setting him up to hey, I'm looking for Joe Royer, move the safety out of the middle of the field. Marvin Harrison comes in for the right-hand side, runs a little slant, and it's an easy touchdown, just pitch and catch touchdown. That was, it's like you look at that and it's like, okay, very easy pitch and catch to a guy 10 yards away. He had inside leverage. He had the defensive back beat. That's an easy throw. It's like, yes, but there was a bunch of stuff I think that went into that touchdown before it happened where, you're talking to Royer. I think that draws the defense's attention to Royer. You're then looking left. You're moving, you're probably shifting linebackers and safeties with your eyes, and then you switch back right, and then there's no one there, and then that's why it's an easy pitch and catch. I came away very impressed with CJ Stroud after watching that game again. I mean, he was, watching live, it was like, yes, this is a very good performance. He's completing many of his passes. There's a lot of yardage. They're scoring some touchdowns. Yes, this is all very impressive. But he looked very comfortable out there. He wasn't jittery. There were, we'll probably talk about some of the other quarterbacks later, but there were times the other quarterbacks looked a little jittery, maybe, we're putting a little too much zip on the ball or we're just a little off target. CJ Stroud just seemed very much in control, in command the whole time. And then, and this is one of these silly things that you can't read too much into, but it's just, he's out there, he's high-fiving the defense. I had a picture of him at one point, going over and high-fiving the defensive line after the defensive line had a good play. He just has that leader of the team kind of vibe about him. And, again, that's one of those things that you can read a bunch of different things into that if you want to, but it just looks like a guy who is very much in command of the team.
I believe you can't look enough into that. You can't make too much of that to me. That just the the leadership aspect. I'm happy for everybody. Everybody likes me, that sort of stuff. And I go back to when we were talking about Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins battling it out, and it was always Joe Burrow who was right next to JT Barrett, like leading the team and firing everybody up and celebrating with everybody. So I don't think you can make enough of that. And you see that with CJ Stroud. And I tweeted out the play you're talking about, which if you go back and watch it, check my Twitter account. It's
do I have to?
Well, just go to the media portion, and the video won't be too far away. But so yeah, you're right. He goes over and talks to Joe Royer, and then he looks his way as with the snap. He's got the ball, looks his way, and you can see Kayvon Pope. You've got the lacrosse circle, right? Kayvon Pope is in that lacrosse circle. He starts to run to where the play is going, or where he's supposed to be. He comes back to the left because CJ Stroud keeps looking to the left. And then as CJ Stroud looks back to the right to where he knew he was going all along to Marvin Harrison, Kayvon Pope can't get back over there. And you've got the window for that slant. And it's just, to me, it looked like mind games with the linebacker. I don't know what the original route was for Joe Royer. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe, because Joe Royer stops like, a yard short of the goal line, just turns around and stops and is ready for the ball. And so you could see guys shading over that way, and Kayvon Pope couldn't get back. And I just thought it was just one play. Maybe we're making too much of it, but it sure looked like a veteran play by a quarterback. And that's what you want to see from a redshirt freshman.
Yeah, he just looks like, we talk about the advantage that you have having been in the system for a year. Like, he didn't get to play much, literally 0 pass attempts last year. That was a fun stat I hadn't seen before. First time that Ohio State has no returning pass attempts, 0 returning pass attempts on their team since 1952, which, given how Woody Hayes ran his program, they may have had a returning starting quarterback that year. I don't know, but 0 returning passing attempts, first time since 1952. So, he's not game experienced, but, he just seems very in control of the offense, and just, he's not panicking. I'll be really interested to see if Nevada can get a hold of like game grades and that kind of stuff. But it just looked like a performance where he was doing the right thing with the ball. He was making the right choice for the most part. There was maybe like one read option where it's like, yeah, he probably should have handed that off or kept that, whichever one it was. But, there's no tackling. So how much do you want to sweat that? And, how much, the fact that whoever it was got tapped to, a little quicker than maybe he would have or whatever, that how much does that matter? Probably not a ton. So yeah, he just looked in control the whole game. It always just looked like this is someone who knows what he's doing, who's comfortable doing what he's doing, and who's got everything under control.
Go ahead and stick with the quarterbacks then and go to Kyle McCord, because I love the fact that he's as aggressive as he was, and just right out of the gate. And I'm not here to dink and dunk. I'm not here to be safe. I'm here to throw what I know. I'm here to do what I know I can do. And if I've got receivers that can get down the field, shoot, I'm going to use them. And yeah, he missed the one that would have been a touchdown to I think Jackson Smith and Jigba on one of his first drives. But he seems just to get better and better as the game goes. He does not seem like a true freshman at all. I love his attitude. To me, he's a natural leader, which is what we've heard about before he arrived. And I think we've seen that. He's confident. He's not cocky. Like he's not out there showboating or whatever. He's just, I'm going to do what I want to do what I know how to do. And I've been put in a position to throw down the field. So that's what I'm going to do. And I can do that. And so it was fun watching him. And I just like the aggression. And that's what I missed from Jack Miller. I would have liked to have seen something from Jack Miller, and maybe he was making all of the correct reads with the dump offs and the short passes to Marvin Harrison. Like, you can't really go wrong throwing the ball to Marvin Harrison and stuff like that. But I'd be interested, like you said, in those grades, and was he making the proper reads when he was just staying conservative? But it's like, well, it's a spring game. Let's see what you can do. Like you've got a straight track. What will a car do? Like, what can you do? How fast can you get going? How, what do you have down the field? And so I was, maybe it's meaningless, but I was disappointed that we didn't get to see more of that, or that he chose not that we didn't get to see it. It's that he chose not to do that.
And he had the one note I had on Miller was he was like staring down Garrett Wilson on that interception. He took the snap, he looked left. He was, it was like the exact opposite of the CJ Stroud thing where he looked half the defense off and then had a wide open guy. It was like he took that snap and it's like, well, this ball is going to Garrett Wilson and everyone in the stadium knows it. And it went to Garrett Wilson and Ryan Watts also knew it and he intercepted the ball. There was just, and again, you don't want to make too much. It's one throw. It was the first drive of the game, first time playing really in front of any meaningful number of fans. So, you get a little bit of grace there, but yeah, that was something that jumped out to me. And, to your point about Kyle McCord looking more comfortable as the game went on, first part of the game, he hit that nice deep one to Garrett Wilson, but you mentioned missed Jackson Smith and Jigba for a touchdown, missed Harrison down the right sideline deep. Both of those were probably just like a little more air under both of those, and they probably are touchdowns. That may just be nerves, that may be just a little too much adrenaline pumping, and you're just zipping the ball a little too fast. Once he settled down, he had a really nice pass to Marcus Crowley along the sideline right before halftime. There was that pass, the touchdown to Jackson Smith and Jigba in the back corner of the end zone that was a dime. There was not a huge window. Cam Martinez was right there. He just didn't get his head around. There was a very small window and it was just like zip right in there. And you can tell he has the strongest arm of the three. There's not much question there. It's entirely possible he ends up the best quarterback of these three before all is said and done. But I think CJ Stroud's probably still ahead of him right now. I mean, that extra year in the system makes a big, big difference. But yeah, you watch those guys again, and it's like, man, there are a couple. Ryan Day has a couple, probably three good options this year. There is not a bad option there where it's like this guy does not belong. You've seen spring games where it's just like they get down to the third quarterback, and it's like, okay, this guy, if this guy gets in, they are in trouble this year. There definitely wasn't that this year, but like there are some real talented quarterbacks on this roster.
And we didn't even mention Jagger LaRoe.
Number one quarterback. That was, watching that again, we mentioned that on the postgame show, how fun that was just to see how excited those guys were. But man, that was a really, that was a fun drive. I was kind of screened from the catch. It wasn't Sam Wigloose. It was Austin Kutcher, I think, who had the catch on the last one. I think. No, it was Wigloose. Was it Wigloose? Okay. Yeah. It was Sam Wigloose then. That was a fantastic catch right at the pylon. That was a great throw, great catch. And it was like, that was a great walk-off play to end the spring game. So yeah, I don't think Jagger LaRoe is probably going to play a whole heck of a lot this year. I don't think JP Andrade is probably going to play a whole heck of a lot this year, but they both look like guys who are people who probably could, if in a pinch, they would probably not be the worst big quarterbacks in the Big Ten if they did have to get thrown in there. Yes, it's my turn. Yes. Emeka Egbuka, we talked about him a lot. He had some big numbers. He made some, there were some that were just like, oh, it's a drag route and he's just wide open because whoever, there's probably some kind of spectacular bust in the coverage. There were a couple that were like, he had at least two, maybe three that were like way behind him. And you look at, Jack Miller had the one to Chris Olave that was kind of like, it was a drag route and it kind of hit him on the back shoulder and it just, he couldn't quite get his hands back and catch it. There was one for Egbuka that was like that he had to like lean back. It was like physics defying that he like went back and caught it behind him. And I think there was another one that was like that too. The number one receiver in the country rating, it's like, okay, well, maybe it's because this guy just catches everything. They have a guy like that, like Jackson Smith and Jigba last year. It's kind of looking like you might have a guy like that again this year with Emeka Egbuka, Garrett Wilson, kind of like that. And like you stack enough of those guys together, and it's like you're setting your quarterback up to have a pretty darn good year if you've got, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then a bunch of other guys who also can do that kind of thing. There were a bunch of drops on Saturday, which was a little uncharacteristic from some of the veteran guys, but yeah, Emeka Egbuka was super, super impressive because individual spring game stats, you can't ever read a ton into them. But if you're making multiple plays that were like wow plays, like, all right, that means something.
Yeah, that catch where he had to jump backwards almost. It was like a Larry Fitzgerald type of grab where just all hands and just really strong hands, soft hands. Same with Marvin Harrison. Just the way they snatched the ball, it's impressive. Which leads me to my last one, I think, if I'm doing my counting correctly. Let's not forget about Julian Fleming. Let's not forget that he was a guy who started in place of Chris Olave last year, played a lot, has been dealing with an injury since high school, finally got cleaned up, and so he was very limited this spring, but has as much talent as anybody. Brian Hartline talked about how he's as big and fast a combination as he's ever seen. And so, let's, while everybody is thrilled with Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and rightfully so, there is a second-year guy on this squad named Julian Fleming who is as talented as anybody. And I think, this rotation is tough. It's going to be it's deep, and you don't want to take Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave off the field if you don't have to. But those are guys who are also going to be running some deeper routes. So yeah, they will have to come off here and there, and so Julian Fleming will have his opportunity. But it's, is he behind Jamison Williams? Again, don't forget about Jamison Williams. I know people are already writing him off as well because of all these other guys, but these guys are too good not to play. And there are things that Jamison Williams can do that you can certainly use. And the same with Julian Fleming, who I think can do any of it. And I just don't think we need to forget about him just yet, because to hear Brian Hartline talk about him a week ago, like he would sound like he was talking about Jerry Rice multiplied by Mike Tyson.
Well, and Julian Fleming was another guy who wasn't he the number one receiver in his class by at least some services? I mean, that's something that means something. He was in a high school offense that really didn't throw the ball very much. So he was just, he did not have the fancy high school stats that like a Jackson Smith and Jigba did, but he's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got the ability. If he's finally healthy, just throw him on the pile with all the other guys that are going to be, fantastic guys who make the quarterback's lives a lot easier this year. That's an incredible luxury to have. And the nice thing for Ohio State is you have the opportunity to actually play 6-7 of those guys. This is not quarterback where, having three guys who are all good is kind of a problem. Like, this is 6 guys can all play, 7 guys can all play. Just you're going to take turns. You're going to wear the opposing defense out. Like that is all positive. So that goes under the very nice problem to have pile. So my last one is a little off the board, but it was just something that just occurred to me as I'm watching this, watching the game. You've got Emeka Egbuka from the state of Washington, just having an absolute blow up day on offense. Maybe the biggest, most impressive day on offense of anyone. And then you've got a freshman defensive end, Jack Sawyer, just thriving already. Huge day for him as well. And it's like, I wonder if JT Tuimoloau was watching this game. He, of course, is the number 1 player in the entire country for the class of 2021. He is unsigned right now. He is, I think, planning to wait and take some visits in June once those things open up. Ohio State is considered, a strong contender, maybe the favorite to land him right now. But you got Ohio State, you got Alabama, you got some other programs in the running there. He's friends with Egbuka. I think if he's talking to Egbuka about, how's things going in Columbus, I think the answer is pretty darn good so far. Did you see the spring game? And if he's wondering like, hey, what's it like being a freshman defensive end under Larry Johnson? It's like, turns out you can do a bunch of stuff and make a pretty immediate impact and get on the field and be in the rotation potentially this fall. So yeah, I don't think anything that happened in Columbus on Saturday is going to have a negative impact on their chances of landing the number 1 player in the class of 2021, which, I'm not one of our official recruiting analysts, but in my opinion, they should try and get him because he sounds like he's pretty good at football.
I'll have to look this guy up. JT
Tuimoloau. Yes, you can find some highlights of him last fall on defense, but also as a tight end, like running open down the seam at like 280 pounds. It's like, oh, that looks terrifying. The safety's fleeing in his wake. No.
Yeah, I like that. I don't know how you can watch Ohio State's defensive ends over the last however many years and be a defensive end and think, you know what, that might be the place. But of course, you can say the same for Alabama as well, even though they run a 3-4 and it's different. But yeah, there's certainly a lot to like for him. I know everybody's waiting for information on him. It'll eventually get here. Just be patient. If there's one thing Buckeye fans can be, it's patient. We know this, right? Am I wrong?
I think they're still angry that Terrell Pryor made them wait like an extra month. So maybe not.
There are still people mad at Meg.
You made me wait 15 minutes for Kyle Dodson, you monster.
I will never forgive you for that. All right, I think that'll do the show. I thought that was a pretty good show, Tom. We should talk about how good it was after the show, not during the show.
I think I have to watch the show on BTN again later to know for sure, and then I'll have notes on the show later.
Right. Oh, well, that will give us content throughout the summer. So that's good. We'll just talk about the show we did the week before and grade it. And I can't imagine any bad grades coming from anything that we do. I'm sorry. Did I say something funny?
We're both going to be landscaping Buckeye Grove all summer. How did we lose again? I don't understand.
We need to move on and stop talking about stuff that we've lost because we never win. All right. So that will do the show. I thank you all for listening. Make sure to check out BuckeyeScoop.com. Check out our YouTube page as well, youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop, where constantly throwing up some interviews there from all of camp. And now there's going to be all of these podcasts are there as well. So many podcasts, so much information. We get questions, like I'll solicit questions for the podcast. And it's like, well, so much of what people are asking has been answered either, by us, various other mediums on the Ask the Insiders board. So it's like, if that stuff interests you, I promise you and not that we don't mind answering any of that stuff and talking about it, because as I just alluded, we need content. We have to talk about something. But like, if you have these kinds of questions, the Ask the Insiders board is great for that. Look out later this week for you and I and Alex were on Dominic Smith's show. And you guys are kind of mean to me. So if that stuff interests you, I think that's going to drop maybe like Thursday or something, if you like people being mean to me, and of course, who doesn't? So I look forward to that. And I think that is it. So we will talk to you guys on Thursday as we grade our bold spring predictions, unless something happens between now and then and we have to scrap that show because news happened. But Tom, I got to look at the bold spring predictions, and one of us did okay and the other did not so bad.
Okay, well, that's good. I'll take that. I was going to say, this is a level of accountability I'm not used to on this podcast. I feel like we do these shows and it just goes into the ether, and then it's like, oh, well,
we were right.
Did I predict Ohio State to stop playing football 6 weeks ago? I don't know, maybe, but it doesn't matter. No one's ever going to go back and check. Now we have accountability. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this.
Well, I'm just going to talk about the ones you got wrong. So anyway, that'll do it. Thank you all, and we will talk to you guys later.